Hi, welcome everyone. Happy Thursday. We're so excited to have you with us today. Before I get started, I wanted to jump into our disclaimer and kind of talk to everybody about that since I missed it yesterday, actually. So Mountain West IRA does not offer investment, tax, financial, or legal advice to clients. We do not promote, endorse, or offer any investments. Individuals who believe they need advice should consult with the appropriate professional licensed in their area. With that being said, I did want to kind of jump into how Mountain West IRA is combating COVID-19 right now. Just wanted to give everybody a little information about what we're doing. Right now, we are not having walk-in clients come into our office. If you need to drop off anything in our Boise office, we do have drop boxes. Or if you need to, you can mail them to us, our address. We will put those in the comments so you have the address if you need to mail anything into us. Also, keep in mind that during this time, our Florida office is not taking walk-in clients as well, so either is Idaho. But if you have any questions, you can still email us. You can give us a call. We'll have our numbers actually at the bottom of the screen, so please let us know if you have any questions or concerns. We are also still taking DocuSign or HelloSign, so that digital platform is still available for you to use if you're needing to. You can give us a call, you can fax us, or we can also take anything via email. So if you have any documents or anything that needs to come in, those are still available, and we are still fully operational right now during this time. So please keep that in mind. And if you have any questions, please feel free to give us a call. With that being said, we're so excited about today's little live that we have going on here. We have Jason Anderson and, of course, Megan Gillane. Here we're going to kind of talk about what to expect when investing in new build projects in your local market, and that's what Jason's going to go over. But I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Megan Gillane to kind of get us going today.
Thank you. And I wanted to just add in on what is going on during COVID-19. Mountain West IRA is considered an essential business, so we will stay open for your financial needs throughout this process. We are considered in all the rules that we can, stay open and follow the guidelines, all of that. So our staff is here to help you, and just make sure to call or email us if you have any questions. Join us on this live stream. Please like, share, comment, all of the above. This is the time to get your questions answered. Jason is not an employee here at Mountain West IRA, so you cannot call us to get the questions answered by Jason. So this is a great time to chime in the chat box if you have questions as he's starting to speak. And with that being said, thank you, Jason, for coming on, and I'm going to let you take over the floor.
That sounds great. Thanks for having me. So I'm going to kind of just dive right in here to my timeline that I've got set up and talk about my experience and kind of how I got into this. And so I want to start with the first things first is I run a company called Valor Investments here in town, and we started off kind of doing small builds, and that's where we're at right now. And so that's why they're having me on the show today to talk about that. And so, Megan, do you have the slides?
Yes.
We'll just go through the first couple of slides. So the second slide is, I don't want you guys to be afraid to ask questions. I know on the live stream, a lot of people are very silent. They don't want to ask anything, and then you get the emails afterwards. So make sure you're getting those questions in, because the biggest hurdle to any sort of new project is not knowing. It's the unknown. So I want to make sure you guys are well informed today. So moving on, I'm going to stop right here on this slide for a minute. Why should you listen to me today? The value proposition here, the three things I want to cover are, first, my story. I feel like that's relevant to share with you guys, because a lot of you may have a similar journey as I have had getting into this. But, some of you are probably going to have much different experiences based on who you interact with daily, kind of the different circles you're in and stuff like that. The second thing is partnerships. I'm going to talk about who to look for if you're trying to get into small build investments. This was tricky for us in the beginning, but my wife and myself getting into it, because it's just who can you trust? How do you know? Kind of going over stuff like that. And then the final piece is the return on investment. That's why everyone's here. That's why we get a lot of investors. People want to know, okay, what kind of money can I make? And I'll get to that at the end. So the first thing I want to cover before I go into the value propositions, though, is the thing I think is the most important is you need to have a mentor. You need to have people you look up to, because there's no reason to reinvent the wheel with this process. And so there's two people who I've kind of looked up to here locally. One's local and then one's on a national scale. And I started this probably about 2 years ago listening to him. One is Robert Kiyosaki. He's the author of Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And he also runs a segment called Millennial Money. And he gives out a lot of good, interesting advice, things that kind of make you think. And one of the things he talked about for real estate agents is that there's a large pool of investors out there who are middle-class Americans who are sitting on anywhere from $25,000 to $500,000, and they just don't know how to invest in, and they would love to invest in real estate projects, especially not just buying rentals, but in these kinds of new builds, but they don't know how to do it. And that kind of got me thinking, so how can I get in touch with those people and then get in touch with the builder and kind of make these projects happen? So that started about 2 years ago when he kicked that process off. And I'll come back to that in a second with my story. The next person here locally who I think is kind of an important person to look at, because it's kind of where I took inspiration from, was Tommy Ahlquist. For those of you who aren't from Idaho, he was an emergency room doctor at the time when I was in college. And it was fun seeing him at the ER come in, do his 8-hour shift and then go home. And that was kind of cool because I watched during my college years, I watched him go from being a physician full-time to he started doing investments. And then I remember, I think it was his first big project was the Salter Medical Plaza over on Eagle and Franklin. And it's where the Buffalo Wild Wings is now. And it was like a huge sizable deal. And it was cool to watch that go up. And then within the next year or two, he was coming in the emergency room as a part-time job, like for fun, just to keep his license current. And that was kind of cool to me because I watched this guy take a risk, get into the small build, because no investment is without risk, obviously. But when you're doing this, especially on the small build side, it's incredibly mitigated, and I'll talk about that later. But anyways, so Tommy Ahlquist is another one of those guys who now they own everything. Vol Ventures Ahlquist, they own everything here in town, I feel like. So getting into kind of my story. So I got into real estate probably 3 years ago. My wife and I wouldn't say I'm more of a real estate agent. I'm more of a serial entrepreneur. We have 2 other companies. One is pretty automated. And the second one that I had started, I'm really good at the startup portion of businesses. And my wife is really good at coming in and laying the processes down and then fine tuning everything as we go along. And so that one was to the point where she was pretty much working out the processes and getting that rolling. And I was kind of bored, honestly, and I wasn't sure what to do. So I got into real estate, and I was pretty lucky, pretty blessed right out the gate. I had my first deal within 30 days, and it's just been nonstop since. And it'll be 3 years in June, and I think I've done probably about 70 transactions. And almost immediately in the beginning, I started noticing that I'm always trying to make things better and eliminate red tape, if you will. And one of the things that I had a problem with is interacting with sellers of homes, because the home is the product, and I wanted to take that product and I wanted to be able to sell it and cut the seller out of the equation. And then the other thing I started noticing, because I was listening to Robert Kiyosaki again, is that I had several smaller investors always asking me, hey, what kind of opportunities do you have? What kind of projects are there? And it's hard to go and find those projects if you're not actively looking for them all the time. And so I started kind of looking at it. And then through the real estate process, I met a contractor. His name happens to be Jason as well. And he took care of a lot of the RE10 work for me, which are inspection repairs. So if you need 10 things on the home fixed in order to get it to sell, and that's what they're negotiating, he'd come in with his crew of guys and he would do it. And Jason was in the process of venturing out more into the residential section, because he actually has a fair chunk of the Northwest Regal contract. So anytime you've been in a theater and you see the contractors there, it's probably his guys doing the work. And he just wanted to diversify a little bit, because he said, if the movie chains ever went under, I want to have a backup plan, which is ironic given our current situation. All the movie theaters are shut down right now. So anyways,
right.
So Jason started diversifying, and I sat him down probably about a year and a half ago, and we had a conversation where I said, "Hey, Jason, is it possible if I was able to get seed money together that you'd be interested in taking on a residential build job with me and us working that together?" And he said, "Absolutely, like let's do it." So I said, "Okay." So I kind of got started on that, and you know, I was met with resistance, and I kind of got discouraged a little bit. And in the meantime, another agent in our office at the time, at Century 21, when I was there, he knew that Jason was also doing this RE10 thing, was trying to get into the building. So he connected with Jason, and they built 2 or 3 homes together in the last like 6 months to a year. And they've just had really, really good success. And so I was able to use some of that information, and I was able to approach investors and say, because the biggest barrier is people say, well, he's never built an actual house before. And it's like, no, he's built these huge movie theaters, but no.
Right.
Yeah. And so then they're like, well, I just don't, you know, I'm not sure. And so anyway, so he had a couple builds under his belt. They turned out really nicely. The ROI was there, and I was able to get 2 investors on board to invest in our first project. So in our first project, it's, you know, we ended up finding a 0.3 acre plot out in Middleton, and I'll show you a photo here in just a second. Let me look and see. Yep, that's the next slide. Thank you. This is our current project. It's out on Fox Lantern Road in Middleton, and part of the problem builders are having right now is finding good pieces of land that they don't have to go in and develop themselves, that the developers already come in and set up all the utilities. Because if you don't have that, then the cost can get pretty out of control pretty fast. But we're fortunate enough to find there's plenty of medium to small size builders out there that are biting off more than they can chew. They run across these excellent deals. They buy, you know, 10, 20 acres at a time, and then they realize they can only build 1 or 2 houses at a time. And then pretty soon they've got a couple lots left over, and those are getting picked up left and right. So we were very fortunate to find this lot. We got the seed money in November, and half of that investment came through Mountain West IRA, someone who does business with Mountain West IRA. So shout out to them. That was a very smooth process. And we were able to get the other half from, I'm not sure where they kept their money, but some bank. But anyways, so we started the permitting process in January, and we broke ground, I think January 15th out in Middleton, and we're through framing right now. And it's been very, very exciting. And I did run some numbers this morning because I want to kind of give those of you who are watching an update as to where those numbers stand on the ROI standpoint. And I'll get to that last, like I've been saying. But any questions so far, you guys?
About how long is the average new build?
So that's an interesting question. So normally I would budget 5 to 6 months total. And I say, you know, you should be able to put up the house and get everything completed in 4 to 5 months. But all of the little cities are different, at least here in Idaho. So I know like in Boise, you know, you can normally get permitted in 2 weeks. It took us a month in Middleton because they're just not as organized. And there were a lot of surprises. For one of the examples is on the fee schedule, you know, to connect to a sewer in Boise, the previous house Jason had built, it was $4,500. And so when we went to the city of Middleton and we said, hey, we want to submit plans, the city of Middleton said, hey, well, you got to pay us $2,500 in non-refundable money. And then we come back and tell you what your actual fees are going to be. And we said, there's no way to know what it is before that. And they said, no, that's the process. And I was like, well, that seems crazy. So we did. And their sewer connect fee, for example, was $6,000. It was $1,500 more expensive than Boise. And the lady at the office told us, if you don't like it, don't build in Middleton. So it was like, clearly they're trying to discourage the growth. So that was an interesting hurdle, and it was part of the process. But that being said, we are still very budget. Yeah, it was crazy. And a lot of their impact fees too, you know, the smaller cities were higher than Boise and Meridian, which surprised me. Like the transportation impact fee, the park impact fee, they were all just a little bit higher than what we were expecting. It was like, well, that's interesting because they don't seem to be doing a lot of building out there. Mm-hmm. So anyways, you know, we're through the framing on that, and it's been a fun process so far. And it's been challenging, but you know, everything's come together and lined up for us. We've been very fortunate. And so anyways, I hope that kind of gives you an insight as to how we got started there. And then I will talk about next the partnerships and who to look for, and that's the next slide. So when I started, when I got into this, I thought to myself, when Megan was saying, hey, Jason, would you come on and speak? It's like, yeah, but who do I tell you who to look for? Because if you're an investor and you're at home or you're working and you're thinking, well, who can I go approach? Many of you are probably already know real estate agents, or you probably have a friend who's a contractor. You may not know any wholesalers or developers. Those people are a little bit more sparse, but I would encourage you to just not be afraid to go out and ask these people. I'm going to say the best route, in my opinion, is probably finding a real estate agent who's in the business already and actively selling and doing something like this. You want to find someone who's doing 10 or so deals a year is what I would say, because you want to make sure they're not just in real estate part-time and they understand the contractual part of it. But then also from a number standpoint, if you ask any real estate agent, for example, right now, what is it going to cost to excavate a 2,000 square foot home? My guess is the vast majority of them would have absolutely no clue. And so if you're working with that person, everyone has to start somewhere. But if you're new to the business, then you probably should get someone who's been doing it for a while and has some sort of experience here. The answer is $5,000, by the way. That's a good number in Middleton. $5,000 if you're excavating a 2,000 square foot lot. But anyways, the reason I would say the real estate agent's the best option out of these ones is because with a general contractor, what I've found oftentimes is general contractors are really good at taking direction. If you present them with a plan, they're very good at executing that plan, but they're terrible about keeping the paperwork in order. They're terrible about getting you receipts on time. And if you just want to hand that person your checkbook and basically say, go build me a home, you're probably going to see them in 6 to 8 months. And you're probably going to just have a nightmare of a time going through your QuickBooks trying to sort everything out. And then the last one is the wholesalers. The small build investment side, while it is going to be lucrative, I do think there's plenty of good opportunities out there that I still see regularly also for flips. And I would consider a flip kind of in that same realm of a small new build construction type deal. And the reason I say that is because the margins can be very similar overall. From what I've seen. In fact, there's one closing in Nampa tomorrow, and that was buy-in at about 260. There's 40,000 into it, and we're going to end up selling it for about 340, 350. And so the margins are there if you can find the deals. And a lot of the times right now, people who aren't in the real estate world 24/7, you're going to your 8 to 5 job. You're not exposed to the same kind of wholesaling groups that we are. So the real estate agents and the wholesalers, they have that inside track where I'm getting emails every day for people saying, hey, look at this property. This is a great property. And oftentimes I look at that property and I go, that is a good property. And then it's like, who do I know that would want to buy that right now? And it's like, I just don't know. Like my personal pool of investors is not large enough. And I know that there's people out there in my personal sphere that are doing this or want to do this. And I need to be more vocal about getting out to them. But I also wish, sitting in your guys' shoes, I wish that they would reach out to me and say, hey, I just want you to know, even if I'm 50% serious, would you please include me on the wholesaling list that you're on? And it's like, absolutely, I'll send you deals as I get them. So it's a good way not only to pick up houses, but also to pick up land deals, because land is what's really, really hot right now. You can, and Megan asked me before we started the stream, she said, what about with this COVID-19 thing going on? How is real estate? How's that going? Is that okay if I touch on that now?
Yes, of course.
Yeah. So it's an interesting question. I've got it a lot. In fact, our investors on this Middleton deal have reached out and said, hey, what's going on with the real estate market? So let me give you two different thoughts here. First is I had an existing home go up for sale in Nampa last Friday. The price point on that was $230,000. And between
last Friday or Saturday was when COVID-19 was really announced that Idaho had their first case, right?
Yeah, it was like a day or two before we just had our first case in Ada County. And prior to that, we had several cases in Blaine County out in Sun Valley.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So we got the notification, and the sellers were very adamant. They said, hey, we know this is going on, but we want you to have open houses. Like, okay, sounds good. So we did. And actually, I was fine with it. You do the distancing, you have the hand sanitizer, and you just let groups go in one at a time. And then it's, but anyways, we had 24 groups through between Saturday and Sunday, a $230,000 price point. Yeah, we had 4 offers on that property, and we're well over asking. And, before I put the property on the market, probably a week or two prior to that, I'd been wondering, like, okay, how's this going to go? Because we were garnering a lot of attention, and it's like, all right, but is it really going to pan out and still be as hot as we're thinking? And it was busier than I thought it was going to be, even without the COVID-19. So that was really refreshing. And then people say, you know what about from the new build standpoint, right? Like, are you guys, my investors who reached out and called me and said, are you guys concerned about that? And it's like, not one bit. And the reason why is because we still have such an influx of buyers coming in from out of state that anything between the 200 and 400,000 price point range, if the economy collapses and people in California are out of jobs, what is normally the first option? They want to start looking for cheaper housing and get out of California, right? So I still don't think that that's going to change anytime soon. And I started making calls to other larger builders here in town. I have a contact at Corey Barton Homes, the largest builder in the state of Idaho. And I said, hey, are you guys still excavating lots? They said, we're still full steam ahead. Like, this is going to blow over and we need to be ready. And I said, right. And then I also called Coleman Homes. I got a contact over there. They're a subsidiary of Toll Brothers, the largest builder in the country. And I said, hey, are you guys still going to be excavating on our new build? That I have a new build under contract with them with some clients. And they said, absolutely, we're not stopping. And I said, okay, sounds good. So if there was any unsurety right now on the real estate side, also another big unknown that was just clarified yesterday was, will real estate stop if they announce a quarantine, right? If they a mandatory shelter in place, and real estate was added to the list of essential job duties, basically, that people have to stay open with. So title companies and the transfer and sale of real estate will not stop during this shelter in place, for better or worse. I honestly don't think it's going to be a big deal. We just need to be smart about how we go about marketing properties and getting people to go through open homes and stuff like that. So.
Awesome. So that's good. So if you have, just for new build education,
yeah.
So the numbers are obviously different when you're an investor versus you are like hands on deck doing it. So in an IRA specifically, and I know the numbers could be a little bit different outside of an IRA,
yep.
But inside of an IRA, because the person that is investing cannot be hands on at all, that would be considered sweat equity.
Yep.
What numbers should they gauge on if this is a good return on investment or not?
Yeah. So obviously everything is fluid, but I'm going to say if you are not getting at least a 10% return on your investment within a 6-month time period, it's probably not worth the investment. And 10%, when we first started this build job, both these investors I've done other deals with before, never a new construction job, but flips and other sorts of things. And when we first talked, I said, hey, to both of you individually, they don't know each other. I said, I'm expecting a 10% return minimum, but I just want to be upfront. We really are not sure because this is both of our first times. Because everyone goes, hey, contractors, boy, shouldn't you be able to give me one price and be able to figure everything out? And then we know exactly how it's going to line up. In a perfect world, sure, right? These bigger companies can probably do that with more precision than what a smaller company can do it with. But one thing I want to say about that is, the bigger companies out there who are doing 80% Pareto's Law, 80% of the builds, they don't need your money. They don't want your money, and they're gonna keep getting their own money through their own bank accounts and their own bankers, right? Mm-hmm. So you are going to be stuck at the mercy of dealing with the 20%, the small guys who want to start building and want to scale to 5 homes a year, 10 homes a year. Those are the people who are the most who need the most help, and really the economy is going to depend on them to keep building these entry-level homes. And the reason for that is because when you go to a bank and you try and take out a new construction loan, banks right now are so cautious about giving money. In fact, I had Simon's Bank tell us, hey, we'd be happy to give you the money after you framed the house out. And it's like, well, at that point, why do I need you?
What's the point? Right.
Exactly. And that's what they're saying, hey, yeah, no, after you framed it out. And it's like, I'll be selling it 3 weeks after or a month after, right? So those are the people who are, but similarly, they're probably the people who you have the most risk with because they don't have a proven track record, and that's where it can get scary, right? But to go back to your question, Megan, right now I ran the numbers this morning, and we're on track right now. Both of our investors came in because of the IRA rules with a $150,000 initial investment, and we're on track within 6 months to return them a $25,000 each. Once this is all said and done.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and I don't know the exact percentages there. I didn't run it, and because I told both of them this morning that's what it's looking like, and I just said, I'm gonna guess conservatively $20,000, but I'm gonna say it's more realistic. It's looking like $25,000, barring any unforeseen sort of changes.
Mm-hmm.
But one thing I wanted to say is the reason people say, builders should have this punch list to know exactly what it's going to cost. This morning I got a call because we're supposed to start putting up siding next Monday, right? But we haven't, we placed the order, but we haven't paid for it yet. And I got a call from BMC today, Boise, I forgot what it stands for, like material company. It's where everybody buys lumber and siding and stuff like that. But they called and said, hey, our prices went up 10% today. And it's like, great. So, our $6,000 siding just became $6,600. And these are the kinds of things, because as a builder, the way that we're doing it is the investors have seeded money to Valor Investments, and we own the build job. We didn't hand the contractor a blank check. So the contractor comes to us and says, hey, I need $6,000 for the siding. Here's the invoice. And then we cut them the check for that. So it's going out piecemeal by piecemeal. Whereas if you go to a builder, typically they're going to say, hey, I want 50% up front and 50% when it's done. And it's just not, especially with something of this size, it's not a wise way to do business, because, are you going to give someone a $150,000 blank check and just hope that they complete the first part of the job? And if they don't, then what are you going to do? What is a minimum investment? Diana just wrote, what is a minimum investment to get started in something like this for someone who's just starting in an IRA, real estate investing? That's an interesting question, Diana. I would say at this point, for someone like us who, we've done one build, if we were going to do this again, I don't think we'd be looking at anything less than 100,000. That would be ideal. I guess we could do like 50,000 increments, but the problem is you want to keep as few investors involved as possible per job. But I would say probably 100,000 would be a safe number, because a normal 2,000 square foot home right now, your out the door build cost is probably $300,000, and that's with the land included if you can work it in right now. So 150 would be ideal, but definitely 100. I don't know that you'd go a whole lot less than that, but it depends on your relationship. Maybe the builder. Maybe the
land.
Right.
Yeah. And if there's not the IRA rules, maybe the builder just says, hey, I need an extra 50,000 because he's got a relationship with the bank, and you give him that 50,000 and he says, yeah, I'll give you 10% back in 6 months. Mm-hmm. So, anyways.
So I just want to kind of go over what Jason does with IRAs, because we did not address this at all, because we wanted to talk about the investments and learning about new builds. So what Jason is talking about with working with my Mountain West IRA, he actually goes and finds an investor who wants to invest with him.
Yep.
So we are not connecting him or giving him any information of our clients out. It is completely Jason saying, I have this person, Mountain West, can you help open this account so that they could fund a note for, you do notes or LLCs?
We do LLCs.
LLCs. Yep. So then they invest partially in an LLC. Yep. And then at that point, then Jason is able to act on behalf of or get the money from the IRA and act for the client and actually do these new builds and investment properties. So Jason actually gets to run all the numbers.
Yes.
You'll get to talk to either him, or if you're looking to do this with somebody that you know, like, and trust, you'll do it with them, and then you'll be able to connect. But I do want to hit on somebody that you know, like, and trust, because you did mention this is your first new build, and the people that you used to invest with, you had already done deals with before. How do you build that relationship with potential investors so that they feel comfortable giving you money? And what are like some key points that people like in their contracts?
Yeah, so I would say I started off with the real estate, and I met these people through one's a family friend who is a real estate investor, and then another one is just someone who I met through, I think, either Zillow or through my own marketing means. And what happens is you normally start off with a small project. If you don't know anything about, you're both very new, you go for like a flip, you run the numbers, you see how it's going to work out, and it works out, and you make your first 5,000 or 10,000. Everyone gets excited, and you do that a few times. You do that, and then you start scaling up, and then you start moving into bigger things. So as you make more money, it's just a natural progression that it doesn't need to be forced. That's the safe way to do it. And you can force it by finding a builder and kind of jumping into it. And that would be a little more gutsy, but no risk, no reward, I suppose. Just make sure you really trust that person and look at
your due diligence.
I can't say that. Even with the contractor that I'm using right now, I love this guy to death, but you never know how their subs are going to perform or their specific crew is going to perform. and then you got to put their feet in the fire and say, hey, let's get this going, because contractors have a different sort of mentality than an investor has. An investor's like, let's turn and burn, and the contractor's like, yeah, we'll get it done when we get it done. Once you hand them the check, it's pretty much game over. They're like, all right, well, I'll take my time now. But no, I met them, Megan, kind of through those avenues, and we kind of scaled up business wise. And it just happened to be, investors are tricky because they all either have money and they're ready to go at that moment, or you lose them for 6 months because they invested in something else. So really the stars kind of have to align for you to match up and find that seed money and then get the project off the ground, because you need to have the right piece of land under contract. You need to have you need to have the investors come in, and it all just has to line up perfectly. And it sounds like a lot of work, but that's what I've been doing daily, trying to get everything, and it all just happened. It happened when it was supposed to. We'd gone through the flips and things were good. And I wanted to come back to something you'd said, and I forgot what it was now, but I'll remember in a minute.
That always happens. Happens too often to me. Do you have any questions, Meg?
I don't. I think Jason's doing a great job covering a lot of aspects of this. So I think that, with that being said, I would say if there is any questions, please add them in so that we can make sure that we're getting all the information out there to you guys. Like I said, Megan said earlier, Jason's here. He's live now. If you have those questions, those investment questions, it's a great time to ask them. So please do.
You know what it was? It was coming back to the contracts that Megan said. What do you look for in contracts? So what I would recommend from my own experience is when you invest in someone and they say, hey, you never want to cut that person any sort of check directly. I know that may seem obvious for some of you more seasoned investors, but anyone who's new, like if you were like an old, like my mom, for example, should have no clue how this goes, right? So never cut them a check directly. It always needs to be protected somehow through an LLC. No investment is ever guaranteed, but what is guaranteed for my investors right now is they own the company, Valor Investments. They have a written ownership of the company that owns the land and owns the build. And we're only paying as the job is getting done. So, they frame, here's your $13,000 for framing. Now we've got this leftover money. So if this contractor walks away from me, my investors still own the site. They own the job up to that point, and we still have their money secure, and we can go find someone else if we needed to. It would be a really unfortunate situation, but, this is about as safe as it can get, I would say.
I think that's a great point, because as I've done a few flips, and you always, when you're working with contractors, you want to deal in basically a timeline type of situation. So you have the best route on what's going on with money, what's going on with the construction. And I think for an investor who's doing new builds, for you to control that, I think that's great for somebody who's an IRA owner to get those updates so that you know exactly what's going on with the investment. And it's not like 6 months to a year later when you have to turn in a fair market valuation to us, and then all of a sudden this person disappeared or the investment disappeared, whatever it is, because sadly we do get those every once in a while. Mm-hmm. And so I love that part, because it's a constant update. Yeah. Self-directed IRAs, the self-directed IRA owner is in charge of making sure the investment's good, keeping contact with the necessary people, just to make sure their investment is doing well and as protected as possible. So I actually love that little tidbit on contracts and working with potential new builds or just investors in general, whatever it is. I think that's a great point.
I appreciate that. And one of the things we've done with our investors too is I have a drone, and at every phase of this, I've been taking drone shots. One of them lives out of state, and then the other one lives here. But I've been taking drone shots, and then as we've started to put the roof on and sealed it in, and we've started to do the interior work. Now I'm doing walkthrough videos for them, so they can get on once a week, and they can check and see where it's at in the build, and they know hey, and they know, they say, hey, this is what's going on for our investment. Because when you're dealing with a small group like this and everyone's so new, you want to make sure everyone feels comfortable moving forward, and we want to be responsive to investors. And if you find someone who's not responsive to you from the beginning, then what is that going to look like as the relationship goes through? Yeah. So I can't caution you guys enough there. I will say I got a couple more things to cover. Do we have time still?
Keep going.
Okay, perfect. So as far as the partnership is concerned, you do need to decide too up front, if you're invested with the IRA, whether it's a hands-off or a hands-on investment. So the way our contracts are written right now is our investors are silent investors. They each came in with $150,000. and they have no say in how the build gets done. I think that's the quickest and the cleanest way to do it. And if you are going to invest with other people's money, you probably want to make sure that, in my opinion, that it's hands off, that no one has a say except for those who are running the build job. Because if you've got one investor who thinks they want this room tiled and another one who says they want this room carpeted, that could get messy real fast. And time is money, and I wouldn't go down that road personally. So
if you, as the person that is finding the individuals with the money to fund your deals, so the actual investor that is putting together the deal,
yeah,
that was the point to that person.
Exactly. It's like, hey, you're the money. We control the money, and we make sure this guy gets paid appropriately, and then he takes care of all the liability. Because what's beautiful about this is on the liability side, as the investor, you come in and you're funding the build job, and then you collect the paycheck at the end, and you're out. What's unfortunate for the builder, the general contractors, is they've got a 1-year warranty that they have to maintain after the build is completed, and that has no bearing on you as an investor, which I love. So you come in, do the build, you make the money, you're gone, and then it's the builder's problem for the next year after that.
So you would have to deal with that?
No, we would not. We would not.
Contractors.
Contractor would, yeah. Valor Investments, as soon as it's done, that LLC pays out, it dissolves, and then we're out of there. If there's a new project, it's a new LLC. So new pool of investors. So, and the last thing I will say on the ROI, if you're new to this and you talk to people who are seasoned investors, I just want to give a quick story. When I was in college, I got a stock tip, an insider stock tip, and I thought I was gonna become a millionaire. I did something very stupid. I took out a bunch of student loans and I invested in a penny stock. We put $13,000 in a penny stock, and the penny stock within about 2 months was worth $30,000. And my father-in-law, who runs an accounting firm here in town, we do all of our books through him. He told me, "Hey, Jason, you need to sell that now." And I said, "No. I'm going to make $1 million on this. Like, calm down." Right. And so, sure enough, about 2 months later, it was worth $6.83. So it pumped and dumped as fast as possible. And the moral of the story is just be greedy from the investment side. Don't get so fixated on a percentage that you get in your own way. Because when I met with these investors up front, I told them, conservatively, I want to say we're going to get 10%. And I know several investors who, if I would have approached this and went to, they'd have been like, I won't do it for less than 13. 13's my number. And that's fine. But if you're new at this, what I'm telling you is these folks now are going to go from a 10% investment or a 10% minimum investment to, I don't know the percentages again, on 27,000 against a $150,000 investment, but it's sizable, almost 20%, right? They're almost going to get a 20% return. And then if you annualize that, if we can start doing 2 of these a year, now you're talking almost a 40% return on your money. I get the stock market is good, but it's not that good, especially right now.
Yeah, and it's not as volatile with the real estate, and that's what I love about self-directed IRAs, because when people are like in stocks having the freak out and selling everything, in real estate, because it does take longer in general, the freak outs don't happen. Like, I don't think we had any calls. If we did, I'm not aware of them. I don't think we had any calls of people freaking out about their rental properties, their notes. They may have called somebody that they lent to and to see what they were doing, but I mean, for the most part, like it's been kind of normal here. Normal.
Oh yeah. And what's funny about this is one of the investors that's invested in my project right now, back in like late October, when I was giving them the pitch and saying, "Hey, I'd really like you to come on board with this," they said, what are the percentages? And I said, "Hey, conservatively, 10% is what we're hoping for. We're not sure." And then I remember she said to me, she was like a 65, 70-year-old lady, and she said, Why would I invest in that when the stock market is just crushing it right now? And I said, well, you're 65, 70 years old. What's going to happen if the stock market has a sudden drop, like it just gets destroyed? And she said, I don't think that's going to happen under Trump, but I like you, so here's the money, right? I said, okay, thank you. And it was funny because when she called me last week, I said, hey, how much would that $150,000 be worth right now if you didn't do this, right? And it's just funny how things work out. And she said, no, I guess I just got lucky. And it's like, yeah, I think you just made a good decision. So talking about the safety as far as investing in small builds like this, the market here in Boise, we normally lag about a year behind California. That's kind of like the benchmark here in real estate. We look at California and we know we're about 6 months to a year behind them. So if everything is still selling well in California, barring some sort of like nuclear catastrophe or something like that, something really unforeseen, that's a pretty good indicator as to what's coming. And so watching that, if you do a new build like this and you get involved with someone who's doing this, you've got a 6-month time frame to build it, get your money, and get out. And it's just not realistic. It's very unrealistic that the market's going to fall apart that fast, where you're not going to be able to sell that and at least break even in an absolute worst case scenario. So, you own something tangible versus, buying stocks. I own stocks. I do like stocks, but it's just not as safe of an investment, in my opinion, as doing something like this. If you have a crew you can trust and you've really done your due diligence. So.
How would you recommend somebody do their due diligence on the people that they're investing with? Do you have a method to that?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So there's a couple things you can do. So when you do your due diligence, the first thing is you want to look, when you're looking at contractors, you want to see their previous work, obviously. You want to go through and you want to walk through and say, hey, I've just done a couple remodels. Great. Can you get me in? Can I see what you did? Right? You want to look at the quality and you want to ask yourself, is this something I would buy? Am I happy with this quality? Because you can throw up just about anything right now, but it still needs to be decent quality to get it to sell. Right? Mm-hmm. So that's the first place I would go. The second thing is going back to the way you set everything up and you structure it all. My advice is, if you didn't know the builder and you were leery at all and you just wanted to be extra cautious, you could go through a CPA and set up an LLC, have all the money go through them, right? If there wasn't a middleman like there is in our case with Valor Investments, you need to have some sort of middleman who's controlling the money and making disbursements accordingly, and you're not just cutting the check, because then again, you've got that person on the hook, and if they bail, you've still got the money and the asset. And that's the last part, is the asset. You need to make sure the contract reads that you are entitled to that property, and that the builder can't just build it and then sell it, and then that's his property. Because the state of Idaho gives a whole lot of rights to sellers, and if the builder owns that property, it can just create a whole lot of headaches for you if anything goes sideways. Because the state of Idaho really protects sellers more than they care about anything else, and I've been through some pretty unfortunate situations where that's come up. So
that's great information.
Not from the investment side, but from the side, it's been just for an example, if a builder built a house and knew there was a bunch of mold in the crawl space and in the attic, he's not legally obligated to tell anyone about it. Doesn't have to tell you. And in almost every other state that I've talked to people in, that is unacceptable. So in Idaho, we have real estate licensure law, which means that if your real estate agent knows about an adverse material fact, they have to disclose it. In Idaho, we do not have any general contractor licensure law, so it's pretty much the Wild West out here. It's all governed by Idaho codes, and I've known this because I've gone through a lawsuit against the builder because of that exact situation. We were going into contract to buy a house. The house had mold in it. He didn't disclose it to us. And basically what I'm finding out through this process is, as I've been talking with lawyers, is he didn't have to disclose it to you. And it's you've got to be kidding me. And we had an inspection, and it's a long story. But anyways, it was called out and everything, and he should have repaired it. He didn't. And so we're well, he knew about it in the beginning, and they're doesn't matter. So my point is if the builder owns the property and your name's not on title, you're just disadvantaged. It's your money. You need to protect yourself. That's it. So
awesome. That's a great information. Do you have anything else to add?
No, I would say that probably wraps everything up. I'd welcome any questions if this brings up anything. And if you need someone to just bounce ideas off of, I'd love to be a resource for anyone who's watching. Even if you don't need to come use me. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm not selling you on anything. I'm saying if you have questions and you're working with the builder and you're like, hey, this seems weird, just ask me if it's something I would do and I could tell you. And hopefully that's a good indicator and gives you a second opinion that's unbiased and unrelated to whatever it is you're doing. So that's it.
And what is your contact information for people to reach you?
Yeah, so my cell phone number, you can call me, is 208-473-1340. And then if you wanted to shoot me an email, it's jason@andersenrealty.com. And Andersen is Andersen. So andersenrealty.com.
And Jason will add his contact information in the comments in this under this video, so that you can just go in the comments and see that as well. You can add him on Facebook, however you want to connect with Jason. And I'm sure he'll be happy to help you. Thank you for joining us today again. And thanks for all this great information. This was awesome.
Absolutely.
Megan, did you have any closing?
Yes, I did. I think that Jason brought in some great factors talking about LLCs, and I think that we can dive in a little bit deeper with self-direction and LLCs and how it works and kind of that. So we'll be doing another live video that kind of dives deeper into the LLC world and how that works and what that looks like when using an IRA. So we'll definitely have that coming down, hopefully within the next couple weeks, or if not next week. I know we have had a lot of things that have come up that we want to talk about with everyone. So that will definitely be one that we'll talk about.
Yes, and then we'll have to have Jason back on to talk about some other subjects and things that he does in real estate. And so just make sure you ask questions, be a part of the community. Make sure to comment, like, share these videos, share it with your friends and family, just in case they want to know it. We're all kind of stuck at home enjoying the education time on social media. So thank you for joining me. Thank you to everybody that's watching and enjoying this content. Have an amazing day.
Thank you.
Bye.